Welcome to the Lojo Show. This is Sophie Godfrey speaking. As many of you know, Louverture has been leading some major initiatives across the country and beyond. So as his focus expands, we're evolving the show as well. I'll be stepping in as your host moving forward, and I'm really excited about the conversations we have lined up. Today, we're tackling a challenge every CISO is facing right now. How do you modernize faster without increasing risk? Organizations are pushing cloud adoption, automation, and AI integration, all while the attack surface continues to grow and compliance requirements like CMMC, NIST 800-171, and DFARS aren't getting any lighter. So the real question becomes, can modernization and security truly coexist? To help us unpack that, we're joined by Tahir, Ismail, and Sohail Chaudhry, who bring over 50 years of combined experience navigating cybersecurity and modernization within highly regulated environments. Tahir, thank you for joining us today. Let me start with you. When did the CISO role shift from being purely defensive to becoming a driver of transformation?
Thank you, Sophie, for having me. Great question. And basically, CISO roles are no longer just about protecting or defending. It's about enabling the business to move fast without breaking things, right? At the same time, CISOs are now transformation leaders. So it's just not like security gatekeepers. Basically, the whole idea about managing the risk within an organization, the fundamental to that, I think, is enabling and establishing your governance framework or your governance of entire organization. And that outlines basically what is the compliance requirement, what are the legal requirements, what are the requirements from um, different industries, or maybe perhaps your clients you're dealing with. So once that foundation is laid out, that will translate into your business processes, and it will drive certain initiatives, for example, such as knowing where your crown jewels are, like knowing your data, who is the owner of the data, how does it flow, where does it reside, and all those things are translated based or translated from your basically the governance foundation that you will lay. So based on my experience, uh, basically when transitioning into the CISO role or the modernization that has been happening, it's very important to lay that foundation very strongly and perfectly so that the after effect will automatically will enable security, privacy, and legal compliance and all other requirements that an organization faces. I would say that the the role of the CISO from just being defensive when they become an enabler, they need to be part of the business, understanding the requirements from all the stakeholders internally and externally for the organization. And again, as I said, basically moving forward without breaking things. That's a shift from the traditional security gatekeeper to a transformation leader.
Thank you, Tahir. Sohail, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, thanks for once again having me here, and it's a great question. There's just a couple of things that I'll add on top of what Tahir has beautifully articulated. Enablement definitely is the key. Wholeheartedly agree with that. And one of the things that we can kind of reflect upon is that historically information security roles were more around where business typically would come and say, "Hey, I need to do business, and I'd like to make sure that it's done in a secure way." Whereas today, we look at cybersecurity team led by the conventional CISOs as the enablement arm of most of the mid to large size organization. It's no longer the afterthought, for lack of a better term. I also think that there is another paradigm shift that is kind of worth discussing and kind of mentioning a little bit over here, and that is a few years from today, the discussions were so different. Who knew that we'll be dealing with over 1,000+ AI startups annually within the United States, and if we were to look across globally, it kind of gets multiplied. On top of that, we're seeing thousands and thousands of AI-driven cyber threats popping up pretty much every single minute. And while we can all agree that we've been living in a digital world for some time now, the digital footprint itself has increased immensely. We used to be concerned about safe interactions between human to human, and that used to be the classical conventional CISO concern. Well, we're dealing with robots now. There's more bots sometimes you'll find joining our conference rooms and whatnot. So there's more robot to human interaction, and that's somebody's responsibility. And that might never stop. That is just supposed to be expected to be, I would say, volumized. So while I'd say that AI is doing some incredible good work, whether it's catching diseases earlier than how conventionally doctors would go about doing, whether it's catching fraud sooner than later, or even in our daily operational productivity tool sets, fixing messy schedules, etc. It's literally turning data into a life-saving medicine. However, all of this needs to be done in a secure manner, secure problem, or securely solve this problem. And to be clear, I'm not saying that AI is the problem of the CISO or AI is a problem, but what I'm trying to say is that in reality, the protection of weaponized AI is probably one of the things that CISOs are more looking into, and if not, should be looking into. And that's probably where I see the more of the traction and more of the tensions rising.
Gentlemen, those are excellent points, and thank you for your insight. Let me ask you another question. Where do modernization efforts most commonly stall?
Great. So I think Sohail mentioned very important points here. So mentioned a lot of use cases, especially like with the AI and digital transformation. So thank you, Sohail. I think those are very excellent points. And when you implementing a new technology and you want to know like where exactly could be the downfalls or the project might fail, or I think I will go back to same foundational need that an organization needs it for its success, not only for technology projects but in its entirety. That if the governance structure is put in place, there are policies and the procedures which are driven, and those policies are basically written in conjunction with the stakeholders and the end users in mind. Because if a policy nobody reads, it's not a policy, it becomes a liability, right? For a project to succeed, you have all these governing documents in place, and you have proper procedures which are actually communicated with the teams, and there's a proper awareness of it. So what it also does, like based on our experience, I've seen that if proper communication is done, and um, automatically that breaks the silo, and that becomes like compliance, becomes almost like a culture. For example, we're leading a transformation. All the teams would know their roles, their responsibilities, or their workflows, and each other. They are there to support each other, and the 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 the, the security is not a, of course, after fact. It's part of the procedures process. It's been looked at. Similarly, privacy is looked at. Legal requirements are also reviewed, approved. So we have all these gates, which actually manages the failure for these projects or the implementation or transformation of technologies. And based on our experience, this is exactly what I've seen at multiple places, is that um, organizations want to run into adaptation of technologies, especially like in the AI era we are. Uh, Definitely, I echo, as Sohail said, that it's not to discourage, but to ensure that we manage, right? So we manage the implementation of AI in a way so that it's not an after fact, because there are a lot of organizations, they implemented solutions. There are evidence in the news that, for example, they built a chatbot, and chatbot um, gave incorrect information to the customers. That became a liability, went to the court, and court actually said that the company is liable for the chatbot answers that it has provided. So there was some financial, or large actually financial losses that company took over. And especially when it comes to human safety. So you're talking about medical systems. And there is an example actually in Europe. One of the very large organization actually used AI models to predict uh, cancer diagnosis, which went wrong. And, definitely that's, we don't want. And and as Sohail said, it's not that we cannot implement the AI solution or the latest of the technology. It's just how you govern it and you manage the risk, right? There are different ways, human in loop, human on loop, human in command. Depending on if the risk is very less, it can be fully automated or autonomous like process. So those things are in place, can be done, or I mean, those things are possible, can be done, but a proper governance structure is required. And I would say that, um, again, uh, defining the fundamentals for the organization will definitely lead to success of a project. Because if a proper policy or procedure is not in place, um, there might be uh, there might be lack of clarity, lack of scope, lack of understanding between the team, communication, so which is definitely a no-no. And the worst case is that product is implemented without security reviews, without privacy reviews, without actually mapping the requirements uh, from legal or regulatory bodies. So definitely we don't want end of the day those kind of things. So that would be again some of those things I would want, like the CISOs and the leaders to, it's a refresher for them, or at least if they are new in the industry, they need to follow.
Thank you, Tahir. Sohail, would you like to build off of what Tahir said?
These were some great points from implementation standpoint, Tahir. What others I'd like to shed some light from an early detection and signaling standpoint. And these are some soft points, but if if there's not a close pulse check, this could cause some serious credibility impact, some damage, as well as some financial losses as well. And that is that typically, I would argue and say maybe 9 out of 10, modernization would rarely fail overnight. They
usually leak to death, for lack of a better term, when it comes to things going south and not being managed well. There are typically some quiet or some soft warning signals. They're very basic, very simple, but again, some important things. So just taking this opportunity to kind of highlight some of them. The most classical, conventional that I think we can all agree to is that when there is a silence from the subject matter experts or the folks who are involved, where things are just getting numb, folks are not contributing the right way. That's a very early detection of that something within the plan is not working fine. One of the other things that I've commonly kind of seen pointed out as well are what I call the watermelon status reports. Initiatives are going on, things are getting modernized, but still, something's not right. And why I call them watermelon report is it looks green from the outside. All the service level agreements, all the office level agreements, all the milestones are being met, but still the execution is failing, and that's pretty clear signal that something is not being managed or not being executed right. And then there's a common term that we might have heard over and over again, that meetings. If the governance and reporting, which was articulated earlier by Tahir, outweighs the actual building and testing of it, what you'll see surfacing is that you'll see signs of a lot of administrative overhead. There will be tons and tons of meetings to figure out what needs to get done, and that actually impacts the actual execution, the velocity. It slows down a lot, and from what I've seen is, though that's what I call a slow leak to death, it creates a massive financial burden. It, in many cases, without naming organizations, I think there are multiple examples out there where credibility gets damaged. And we've seen this happening over and over again, whether it's the health sector, financial sector, automotive. So just some common principle, basic etiquettes of modernization, and that is keeping a close pulse on the actual initiative, and that really equates to one word, and that's governance.
That makes complete sense. What if someone is overwhelmed right now? What's the first thing they should evaluate?
So I'll take the first stab at it. I think there's probably not one thing, but going back to the principles and the etiquettes of PMP, what I would say there are three things: the good old three-legged stool, the scope of the initiative, its timing, and of course the budget. If any of this is going right or left, that means something bad is about to happen.
I totally agree, and I think, and even from the organizational perspective, right? It's sometimes CISOs are put into or they step into the roles and situation where the organization might not be that mature. There are a lot of silos. Security is seen as a roadblocker, not as an enabler. And I think that can put a lot of pressure on CISOs, and they can be in that kind of situation where they're really overwhelmed, trying to maintain the protection and the compliance, and ensuring that they have to answer the board and sort of like meet the requirements or the expectation from IT and the technical folks, right? The best thing at that point is, or the method that has worked in the past is, again, I know I am beating the horse to the death, but having certain policies which will actually help you navigate through these challenges. So ensuring like, and sometimes the policies are there again, as I mentioned, but they're not communicated well. and it doesn't trickle down to the different departments and the technical folks. That's kind of like, earning that support from the senior management based on the industry or based on the best practices or based on the requirements from the regulations, and tying it to the financial impact or loss for the organization, uh, and basically documenting it in a way so that um, it's understandable for the board and the technical people. So sometimes we have done it in a way that there's a policy which is a legal writing, but when we train people or we do awareness session, how it impacts um, actually the organization, or so translated, so or vice versa, right? So if you go to a senior management and say that we need to implement two-factor authentication, they might not know. But if you translate that, say that, uh, hey, we might have a breach and the breach might result in a financial loss of X number of amount, then they will understand. Whereas, like, if you go to the technical folks and say that, hey, we need to implement, two-factor authentication or MFA, they will understand it. You don't need to explain them. So that kind of language or practice, I think the CISOs need to, and CISOs play a vital role in nowadays, as in any organization, and it's very important for organizations to actually um, choose the right person, because they can make it or break it, right? End of the day, having these, as Sohail also mentioned, like these early sort of like indicators, definitely from a project perspective, but ensuring that the fundamentals are in place so that it's like a being proactive. You don't even want to get there where you're overwhelmed, and then it's not only one project, because nowadays, like in an organization, when you hit the ground, it's multiple projects and multiple requirements and multiple things happening, and it just it's downhill from there if the foundations are not put in place, and the actual. So but if someone, or as a CISO, is put in those shoes, definitely try to build the governance framework, get the support from the senior management, make it clear that this is the foundation, this is the requirement. Without this, one, two, three will happen. And because based on our experience, this is how we made the organization successful, made the senior management understand the value of this, and save them from not only financial laws, but different legal liabilities and things like that. So if you know exactly what the future can be, you can actually prepare for it, or have other organizations prepare for it. So it's kind of like, unfortunately, like, I've seen most of the organization learn from lesson learns. So when things go wrong, then they will say like, okay, because now they're in the news or they have lost a lot of money. So these kind of things actually force organizations to go back and think and say, what they have done wrong. If you see it in a way where you could, based on our experience, you can implement these things, and definitely that will lead you towards success end of the day.
I appreciate the valuable insight. If you could warn CISOs about one mistake, what would it be?
Again, I think I did mention few of those. I think one mistake would be if they compromise on the foundational stuff, right? if they say that, fine, we can go ahead, implement the technology and not worry about like the foundational stuff, like do we really have the policy governing around it? Do we have the mechanisms and tools to govern the latest technology? So, for example, if we have an AI implementation, it could be a tool, agentic uh, uh, technology, could be a service, but we don't have. And for example, now organizations are seeing it from the lens of saving time and money. So let's have this process managed by a AI agent or an AI service. Within a year, you will end up with, let's say, different AI, you can call them assets within your organization, and you will have no idea how many of them are there, what data is being processed by them, who's the owner, where your data ends up. Is it using all models which are local to your organization, or is it cloud based and your data is being shared within the cloud to third party, fourth party? So if you don't have proper tools there, again, uh, sometimes, yeah, we are put in, or the CISOs are put in this position or this role, is that no, we need to um, go to production. We cannot do this. But you can always say that, fine, we'll work with you, but we need to ensure that we have that governance in place. We need to ensure that all sort of impact analysis are being done, approved by all parties, not only just security, but the privacy and legal has looked at it. And I think more we have these AI models put in our organization, or which are actually, as Sohail mentioned, they are increasing our attack surface. More the data strategy or the data governance is becoming important, right? So if you are going to use the data for your AI models or systems and tools, if the data is not uh, accurate, you'll get the output as such as well, right? So if you don't know who's the owner of the data, you'll end up with maybe liabilities or not managing the data properly. So I think one piece that leads to data strategy or data governance is, again, going back to having the right policies. And again, it comes, how do you choose what are the right policies for the organization? And of course, based on the organization uh, vertical, what's applicable based on the regulatory requirements, based on the best practices, based on benchmarking, you will have the proper actually policies in place. And one thing at actually BlackRock, what we have done, and we are expert at it, is that we have actually unified the governance requirements, so you don't have to actually implement, let's say, 10 or 15 different governing frameworks. So it's one framework which will allow you to actually manage risks in all these different areas. So you have cybersecurity, privacy, you have AI, and we have the tools which actually have helped organizations uh, not only protect themselves, but to enable them to on a fast pace to where they want it to be. So I think that's something that I would, going back to, CISOs need to, again, the fundamental like mistake they don't want to make is that it's revolving around the governing foundation. So that's, I will also highlight on that as well.
Sophie, if I may, I'll just add a couple of things, just piggybacking on what Tahir just stated. And I love the statement that was made around lessons learned, because history is where we can go back and learn a whole lot from. So I wouldn't necessarily just say that there might be a mistake coming their way, but of course, the notion of being mindful of not repeating the history, I think, one of the most important thing, and one of the things that we can kind of keep in mind as we are talking, breathing, dealing day in and day out around AI, keeping this I would say a wise statement in mind that, while there's a saying that every problem has a solution, let's just not forget that every solution brings a brand new set of problems, and somebody has to deal with those problems. Again, not saying that by opening the doors to AI, which already is here in the room, that's not necessarily a problem, but we are also, as we open the doors for AI per se, we are also opening the door to people or bots who might cause some harm intentionally or unintentionally, and that will become somebody's problem to solve. Now, will it be CISO's problem? I would say absolutely. But is it just a CISO problem? It's not a CISO problem. It's more likely an organizational problem that needs to be tackled. And that's where we kind of come up with these or say these phrases that cybersecurity is a team sport. It's something that needs to be baked in, can't be an afterthought. On the same token, there are designations in their bodies that are responsible for ensuring the safety, the security, the availability, integrity, etc. Things that we all hear, but it really brings the whole thing home when we say that there is a clear problem in front of us and it needs to be tackled in a systematical way. With that said, if I was to summarize at least my thoughts around the mistakes or some early signals or things to watch out for, I guess that's probably the way I'll phrase it. I'll say that just keeping certain things in mind, and that is that we are more digital than ever, and not forgetting the fact that what we used to be concerned and worried about as we were doing the early stages of least privilege, zero trust, which was mainly around humans and data interaction or data accessibility. Those attributes have changed dramatically in the last couple of years, and we're living in a world where humans and bots are working together. So we need to be completely mindful of that, and that results into the attack surface overall, or I would say the threat surface, just overall drifting dramatically. There used to be a whole lot emphasis, and still is, not discounting that by far, around data integrity. And Tahir mentioned data in respect to AI and how functional and how productive one could be by utilizing different type of tools and what have you to do what needs to get done to accomplish the mission through AI. But all of that has a dependency, and it has dependency on data. Give it clean data, you'll get good results. Bad data will result in something bad. When we talk about data integrity, this is no longer just a hash check of ensuring that when data left from point A and reached to point B, it's the same data that we expected it to be. In the world of AI, things are quite complicated. The notion of poisoning the data, it's real. We have all heard about hallucinations. We've all heard about the results of what we are looking for, in some cases being bias, AI drift, etc., etc. Well, that poisoning of data is a very complicated problem, and again, somebody's problem to solve, and somebody's responsibility. And I think that kind of falls into CISO as well as our privacy officers into their lap one way or the other. And that is a serious problem, and that is something that I see to be much more higher than ever when it comes to the threat surface. And in simple terms, if I was to put this, I would say that historically, systems and databases would fail, and if they were to fail, there will be a loud noise around it, and we'll find out, all right, something, the data wasn't right. We are used to, on the federal side, doing data calls, for instance. It could be a bunch of spreadsheets that you're filling out, but once you look at it, it'll make a lot of sense whether the data is right or not, right? But when data gets poisoned, how do you figure out right away by looking at it that something bad is about to happen? Sometimes it takes some time, and by the time one finds out, might be going into a complete different rabbit hole, because we are following the bots, we're following the data, but that data is not the right data. So data integrity and ensuring that we are not dealing with weaponized AI one way or the other, and that's the best term that I can use over here in my vocabulary to kind of convey what I'm trying to say, will probably be one of the biggest issue and a mistake that one cannot afford. We within Precise, along with Zero Trust, have been stressing on this point a whole lot. We're working on some frameworks to ensure that there are ways, there are tips, tricks, tools that could be provided to the chief information security officers as well as privacy officers to ensure that as they're dealing with data, there are some early detection and signals that they can kind of take some, I would say, signals from, and then help pivot and move the organization, and as well as the overarching data responsibility and the custodians of data in the right direction.
Tahir and Sohail, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insight is beyond valuable, especially considering your experiences. If there's one thing that stood out from today's conversation, it's that modernization isn't just about moving faster, it's about building the right foundation to support it. From governance and communication to understanding risk and data, it's clear that success doesn't happen by chance, it's built intentionally. We also heard how the role of the CISO has evolved. It's no longer just about protecting systems, but about enabling the business, aligning teams, and helping organizations move forward with confidence. And as AI continues to expand what's possible, it also expands the responsibility to manage risk, data integrity, and the growing attack surface. I have one final question for each of you in one quick sentence. What defines a modern CISO?
In one sentence, I would say a modern CISO will understand the organizational context and will know the risk appetite for that organization, and can use this information, the organizational context, the risk appetite, and work with the stakeholders to actually not only just protect the information, but help organization exceed and excel and navigate through the digital transformation. So I would say, put it that way, in a nutshell.
And I will say something similar, and that is that, as the saying goes, that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'll spend 55 minutes thinking and understanding the problem and 5 minutes trying to solve it. And what that entails is kind of spot on exactly what Tahir said, that it's not about defense anymore. For a modern CISO, I would say that it's all about leadership, it's all about alignment, it's all about that digital transformation or driving transformation, but that transformation starts with that mental transformation in terms of how we understand the problem, solve the problem, and become the enablers of the mission.
Yep. Right.
Thank you again. I appreciate your time. Keep your eyes out for our CISO information sheet. If you are not a part of our email list, please visit our website at www.blackengtech.com. That's www.blackengtech.com. Thanks for joining us on the Lojo Show. Don't forget, here at BlackRock, we fix cyber. We'll continue bringing conversations that help leaders navigate the world of federal contracting and, of course, cybersecurity with clarity and confidence.